Hey, 18 Summers Tribe. We're super excited today to have Michael, Arterberry? Let me make sure I get that right.
Yep.
Arter. Okay, perfect. All right, let me try again. 18 Summers Tribe, we're excited to have you here today along with Michael Arterberry. Michael, as a teenager, was fortunate to receive guidance from positive adult role models who helped him overcome. Wow, I'm really tripping today. Let's try again. 18 Summers Tribe, welcome. We are excited today to introduce you to Michael Arterberry. Man, do you want to do this? What is my issue today? I have never
had
stumbled.
3 in a row. Sorry, Mike. All right, so hold on. Let me pause it.
Yeah, let's stop and start again. I do not know what's going on. 18 Summers Tribe, we're excited to have you here today along with Michael Arterberry. He is a part of our tribe. As a teenager, he was fortunate enough to have some incredible mentors and people who gave him guidance and positivity and just poured into him, as we so often, tell our tribe members to do to their children and in their community. And so he's really been grateful for these mentors and has decided that for more than 25 years, he's been helping teens and adults use their life experiences as a catalyst for success instead of an obstacle for failure. He received the 2010 USA Network's Characters Unite Award for exceptional commitment to combating prejudice and discrimination while increasing tolerance and acceptance within the community. He's also the recipient of the 2014 100 Men of Color Award for leadership in education, government, mentorship, entrepreneurial success, and community service. And in 2008, he founded Youth Voices Center, Inc., a nonprofit with the mission of helping young people become active, productive members of society. Again, by overcoming their obstacles, their history, stereotypes, and even their own self-limiting beliefs. Thank you so much for being here, Michael. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm great. I'm excited. I never had dual interviewers, so this is like an experience for me. So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, we started this. We started this a while ago because we were having fun. We did 1 or 2 almost by accident, and it seemed, being a family podcast, people liked the difference back and forth because we have a little different opinion. We pick up on a little different notes and learn a little different something. I can tell you one of the things that stuck with for me about you was before when you said, yeah, I get nicknamed the Teen Whisperer, because obviously we work with a lot of teens and they can be seen as something of a mystery. And, for you to have such a simple name that kind of unlocks the mystery, I definitely want to get into more of that in the interview.
Go for it.
What brings you to Teen Whisperer? Because I can tell you right now, I like to get right to the meat and potatoes. Right. And so many parents out there are saying, Mike, how are you getting the teens to whisper? What is behind that? What brings it about? You want to talk about that a little bit?
When most people are yelling at their teens.
You're getting them to bring it out.
What I think allows me to connect with teenagers is the fact that the teacher must always remain the student. And what I mean by that is I'm transparent. And during my transparency, I allow them to see that I have cracks as well. And at the same time, I never discredit anything that they say. You know what I mean? Right. And I think it's not, you would have to hang out with me, and you will throughout the podcast. So I'm hoping by the end, you feel what they feel, but I give off an energy to a person that makes them feel like they can be transparent, open, and forthcoming with what's on their mind. So you put me in a room with teenagers, and what I do is I think of the thought of tapping your foot, like if you're listening to music. And so imagine tapping your foot to the music. And what I do when I get in the room with them is I find their rhythm. You see what I'm saying? I don't talk much. I don't pollute the air with just noise. As I sit there and I'm tapping and I'm tapping, and when I find the rhythm, I just get right in there and we ride that out.
Well, give me an example of finding the rhythm, because I love this. I mean, our whole thing is about family rhythms, setting a few strong rhythms in your family. linking
Right.
and keeping you in steadfast together. But give me an example of like, what are you getting into rhythm of a situation? Because I know so many parents vibe for this.
I learned to listen to every word, and by listening to what they say, I take it and then I read between the lines. So in the program that I developed, it's interactive. And so they never tell their full story, but they leave you crumbs. So as they leave the crumbs, I pick up the crumbs. And what I will do when I get the opportunity is take the crumbs that they've given me and then kind of play out their story. And when they hear me piece together the crumbs, they're amazed, one, because what I spit out is not what they've told me. So in their mind, they're like, wow, number one, he must have really been listening. And number two, what is it about him that was able to piece that together to give me a compilation of what he feels I've gone through in my life?
Gotcha.
And how powerful do you think, for our parents listening, how powerful do you feel that portion, that listening part is? Do you think that gives those children validity?
Well, children that I work with in groups, but like we're talking about with our own kids, you know what I'm saying? My kids know that when they speak to me, they know that I'm listening to what they say. And not only that, it because I bring work home, meaning the same process I use at work, I use at home. As many times I can feed back to my son or daughter something they've said to use as an example for growth. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so listening is a powerful thing, because when you hear something that they feel is important, or the average person will skip over, and you present it back, you know, that you get kudos for that. Like, wow, Daddy really remembered that I said that.
That's really powerful for our listeners to hear, I think, because so often parents or spouses tend to not listen to the nuances, to tend to not put themselves in the other person's shoe. So when you say, I read between the lines, what I really hear you saying is that at some point in your life, someone taught you how to feel for somebody else and how to really pick up on where they're coming from.
Well, listen, let me I got to do this for you. All right, so I'm gonna put some meat to the bones. I'm gonna tell you a story, but this story will set up the plate or the interview. All right, and the story is about a farmer and a donkey. All right, now this donkey is one of his favorite farm animals, because after he finishes working on the field with the donkey, he brings the donkey back to his home, and he allows the donkey to play with his kids. So imagine the kids come running out of the house. He's coming down the driveway with the donkey. They wash him, they ride him, and this becomes a normal ritual. So one day he brings them home, they do their ritual, but once they go to bed, he releases the donkey back out to the farm. Now the donkey's out in the farm walking around doing donkey stuff, but in the process of doing that, he fell into an empty water well. Now when he fell into the empty water well, it was too high, he couldn't get out. So he's making donkey noises all night. The farmer comes out the next morning, he whistles for him, he doesn't show up, so he's walking around the farm whistling and calling his name, and he finally hears him making noise at the bottom of the well. So the farmer walks over to the well, he looks in, of course he wants to get him out, so he gets 6 of his friends, he brings them to the well, and he's like, hey guys, how are we gonna get him out? So one of his friends suggested that they pull him out with some rope. So they all got some rope, and they start to lasso the donkey. They throw the rope, they miss. They throw the rope, they miss. They finally throw it by his hind legs. He steps into the rope. They shimmy it up his body, and they start to pull. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. Then halfway up the well, they realize that the donkey's too heavy. So they lower him back to the bottom of the well. And now the farmer has to make a grim decision. Now, see, he can't feed him food at the bottom of the well because that wouldn't make any sense. He can't starve him because starving him, he's more like a pet. So he can't starve him. One of his hot-headed friends says, shoot him. He's like, no, I can't shoot him. That's too violent. But one of his more reasonable friends came behind him and whispered in his ear and said, listen, you don't want your kids to fall into the well. So we're going to make your kids safe, but you got to sacrifice your donkey. So we're going to cover him with dirt. We're going to cover him with dirt, and that's how we're going to do it. So the farmer says, I can deal with that. So they all start shoveling dirt. And every time that dirt would hit the donkey would scream. And every time he would scream, it would cause the farmer some distress. So you got dirt, scream, dirt, scream, dirt, scream. Then all of a sudden the scream stopped. When the scream stopped, they gave the donkey a moment of silence, but they went back to work. More dirt, more dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, guys, you see his right ear. So they start shoveling faster. More dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, you see half his body. More dirt, more dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, the donkey walks right out of the well that he fell into. Now check this out. Every time that dirt came across the wall, it would fall on the donkey's back. He would shake it off and he would step on it. And he used every scoop of dirt that was meant to kill him to save his life. Now, I need to tell you this so we can get back to the question. I am the donkey. I grew up in a home with a raging alcoholic father.
Wow.
He raged from the time I was born until the time he died when I was 16. Guys, growing up in a home like that, I never went a day with peace. Anytime I got caught up in the excitement of the day, something would tap me on my shoulder and say, hey, buddy, don't you get too happy because you got to go home to that monster. Yeah. On top of living with a raging alcoholic father, I grew up in poverty. Both my parents worked full time. My mother was a housekeeper. My dad was a bus driver, but his money went to drinking. My mother raised 4 kids with a housekeeping salary. Now, on top of all of that, I grew up in dysfunction. If the head of your household's an alcoholic, think about what's going on in the home. And I say that to you because one of my memories as a young person is my parents having these blowout arguments, violent. And my mother would put my clothes on, totally not debrief what happened, and put me on the bus and send me to school. And so I say all of that because you're going to ask me questions of why I feel like I'm the teen whisperer and why I feel I connect with people. Let me tell you something. That is who I am. It's created a world for me to not only be sensitive to those that go through things, but it's given me the ability to read between the lines because my life has been a chasm of just overcoming and being able to find fresh perspectives in what sometimes could be really bad situations.
That's an incredible story. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's incredible.
Yeah, that is beautiful. At first, I'm like, oh God, this donkey. But that, and then I wanted to cry for the donkey, and then I want to give you a big old hug. But I will tell you, being also, we all have stories, and I think it's incredibly beautiful when people share theirs so vulnerably. So thank you. One thing that I've learned, our passion and our purpose often lies right next to our pain. Right. And so I think, just like you said, every scoop of dirt was another thing to get that ear to pop out of that well. And I think that's incredibly beautiful. And I will tell you too, hearing your story and knowing my own, and knowing that I've been told, over the years, that when you experience things like that, you're always searching for the nuances. You're always looking for what's about to happen. And it was such a disservice in our childhood, but what a gift in adulthood to be able to love and tend to others and notice those small things that maybe would go unnoticed otherwise. So thank you for being an example of that, of overcoming something and being able to use those deficits as a superpower.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. And I hope I didn't throw you off.
Oh my gosh.
No,
well,
we
we're both
love
like,
that. No,
we love myself up real quick.
We have similar stories, knowing our story, where Jamie came out of a very, very abusive, dangerous situation, and it was her strength that brought us through. And then that's how I was able to adopt my 2 oldest sons, was through a very awful situation, but brought us all together. So, you know, very similar. But we've learned, and I've always said, even with the stuff Jamie went through younger with addiction,
my own father,
with her own father, I believe you guys have an intuitive power that most people don't have.
Yes.
And it could go either way. We're sitting here where you guys are helping countless people because you chose to take it in that direction. You could have taken it in another direction where you wouldn't be on this podcast right now, and you'd be using it probably for some bad stuff. Right. But both of you took it in a chosen direction to say, I am going to take this and bring it in the right direction. And kind of like we talked about before, you recreated yourselves. Yeah. You didn't use it as again, for the dirt to go on your head, but for the dirt to go at your feet. Yeah. And there's such strength to that. And a lot more kids need that. How do we, and this is something Jamie and I have felt hard, because our own 4 kids, we've fostered children. How do we help steer, Mike, from taking the same path as an addictive parent, or choosing our own path and saying, in spite of that, I'm going to choose otherwise? What
I do is I open my workshops with the story of the donkey. And then I show a house that I grew up in that looks condemned. And then I show the house that I live in now, which is a raised ranch. I put the pictures side by side, and I explain to the kids that life happened in between these pictures. What I'm trying to bring to their attention is, one night when I fell asleep in the first house, we rarely had heat in the winter. I'm freezing, I'm underneath my blankets. I promised myself that if I had my own children, my children would never have to live the life that I was living in the cold house. I say that because they became the catalyst to my success anytime I ran out of the energy to succeed. Now, what I'm saying to you is to push people from making that turn. I'm about breaking cycles. Yeah. You see, what you want to do is to break a cycle. What I was able to do within my family tree is I was able to break a cycle. And the beautiful thing is, it's not like, for me, I graduated to a better life. So I have 2 lives. I have the before and the after. The beauty with my kids is they only have 1. My kids only know part 2. And so what I push to young people that are coming through a struggle is that if you don't like what you live in now, don't rush to have kids. But when you have your own kids, do you want them to come up in what you are dealing with?
Wow. Sorry.
No. Can I
have not supposed to do this?
I saw them.
You saw what?
Them.
Yes, you may have those things. Yes. Wow. Sorry. Sure. But Sammy, birthday present.
Whoa.
Wow. That was a major meltdown.
Sorry, that was at a great point too.
Wow.
Who's what? Jim, who's watching them, Jim?
Well, since we've been on COVID, we usually have a nanny babysitter that helps on Fridays, but we're kind of our last day of quarantine, so Big Brother's on duty right now. So they're flexing. Our age range is 4 to 17, so they're usually really good for Big Brother, but there's been quite a mutiny, it looks like. So, because when's the last time we had had a dog
Wow,
and a kid
even
in
the
interview.
dog plowed through. That
Yeah.
was kind of, wow, wow.
I had a powerful
wow.
moment, but it just shows it's not all pretty, that's for sure.
That's all right. Thank goodness for editing.
So yes, we'll edit at this point, but let's try to pick
Oh
up.
my gosh.
You were making a good point
Yeah.
right there about
Breaking cycles. Yeah. So I want them to create a life so that not only is it better for themselves, but it's better for their kids as well. You know, I'll tell you just a real quick story. Is I had a young lady in my group who 4 generations, no one graduated high school. And so, you know, you're thinking about that. Like for us, I'm like, wow. But I realized she needed extra. But everything that I continue to tell her is, her name was Mariah. Mariah, you want different. Mariah, you want different. You want options. And you know, when she walked across the stage to get that diploma, first of all, I was a mess.
Yeah.
But no one in that auditorium knew what she had to overcome to get that piece of paper.
Yeah. Wow.
It's amazing. Isn't that beautiful? And now, how do we set these high expectations without setting our teens and our children and ourselves up for failure? You know, and how do we recover if we do fail?
Because preparation is everything. So the way that you set a goal and you don't fear failure is preparation. You know what I'm saying? And I say that to you because I'll give you an example. Football was my sport, and you go to training camp for football, and you're usually there for like 2 weeks, and that's to get you in shape for the football season. I was smart enough, even when I was coming up, high school and all, because I ended up playing in college. I was smart enough to realize that if you come into camp in shape, I'm already ahead of the competition on my team, and I'm weeks ahead of the competition that I will play in my season. And so I always came to camp already in shape. Now, the reason I use that as an example is I put myself in a position not to fail. So when you set your goal, you set it, but then you have to make sure that you do the steps in preparation of the goal. You see what I'm saying? Because then that gives you more stock in where you're going in the direction you're trying to achieve.
Wow. It's really powerful. I'm trying to, you know, I'm thinking about our own boys. I say our own boys because our oldest 2 are boys. The oldest one is 17. And I'm like, how can I help Alden make sure that he is, you know, prepared, that he's not set up for failure, but that he sets himself up for winning with his own high expectations. I think that's great.
Well, also what you can do is so allow them to choose the goal. Obviously, we don't want to choose it for them.
Right.
But then you just look at the steps that he takes. So an example is I'll go to a group, and these are kind of funny, but I'll get a student that says, I want to be a professional football player. Now, I never deter them from that, but then the first question I ask is, do you play for your school? Now, a kid will tell me he wants to be a professional football player, but he doesn't play for the school.
Yeah.
So instantly, I say, all right, if that is your goal, then you have to get on a team. Or a young lady will say, I want to be a lawyer or a doctor. And then my next question is, how are your grades?
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll tell me, oh, well, I'm not passing it. No, if that's your goal, you can't fail a class if you want to be a doctor or a lawyer. You have to be the top of your class. So you let them choose their goal. Then you look at what their steps are. And when they start to not be consistent with their goal, if you slap them on the wrist before they get to the point where they feel they fail, you keep them from having that become their reality.
Yeah. That's really powerful.
Yeah. You know, and I'm thinking if they do if they don't meet these high expectations, which, you know, I think it's great to set high expectations for yourself, but then to also have compassion for yourself. So I've trained, I've shown up, I've done the thing, and something catastrophic, different, life-altering things that we can't plan for occurs. How do we have compassion with ourselves in those moments? What do you tell people instead of, you know, or how do we how can we encourage our children with our own words? And how can we build that resiliency in them to be able to overcome these things and put it under our feet and not on our heads?
Listen, guys, it's not about the destiny, it's about the journey. Yeah, that's what
I've seen that poster. I've seen that poster.
That's if you can eat that yourself. I'm talking about me as an adult man, but if you teach your children that it's not about where you're going, it's about what you learn when you get there, it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Because you're going to pick up things on the way to there's things that I learned to get to my eventual end that, yes, I'm happy with what I'm doing now, but there's lessons I've learned on the way that are deep and I mean, it's like real stuff.
Absolutely. And it always moves you into the next phase, doesn't it?
It does. It definitely does, because they build off of each other. You know, it's like turning over the rock, discovering something, and now you have to turn over another rock to make it feel like what you found actually is something that is of quality or worth.
Yeah. Love that. Now, along those same lines, and having, you know, compassion and encouragement for yourself, I think too, having that high level of tolerance for yourself. I know that you teach, you know, in your workshops and in your community, tolerance and acceptance within the community. How do you build those characteristics?
So check this out. I do an activity with my kids. When I do my groups, it's all done in a circle. So I want you to imagine, when I go to a high school, I ask for a cross-section of students. So I do 20 students at a time. My 20 students are made up of white, Black, Latino, jock, honor roll students, and we go through interactive activities over a 2-day period. I do an activity with them that I call concentric circles. So imagine an inside circle and an outside circle, and I run them through 5 questions. The first question is a person you respect and why you respect them, qualities you look for in a friend, if you had the power to change something in the world, what would it be and why, a time you felt most hurt by someone you love and trusted, and a time you lost someone you really cared about. So they talk for 1 minute each. They talk to 5 different people because I rotate them. And then what I do is I pull them back out to the circle. And the first thing I ask them is, do you feel it? Let me tell you something, guys. 5 questions, maybe a 20-minute period, and the essence of the room changes. So you ask me about tolerance. What happens is when they come into the room and they look around, everybody is just a face. They go through the 5 questions and each one of the faces become people. When you talk about tolerance, I will treat a face different than the way I treat a person. Mm-hmm. And the way that I teach tolerance is no longer am I looking at a face, but I'm looking at a person with a life story that comes from somewhere. And so that sensitizes me to the fact that every time I see a face, I'm now conditioned to realize that that face is a person.
It's powerful. How do you work it on the other side, Mike? Because things we've gone through, and even with outreach programs we've been a part of, the importance of, I don't want to call it intolerance, but protection, where we've worked with young people who they're exposed to dangerous elements. And so we're trying to give them space because, you know, the too close of an influence of a dangerous component can really hurt them. So it's been a tough line for us in outreach programs to teach, where it could be a parent or someone close to them who is a violent alcoholic, for example. That's a popular one that comes up. How do we help teach them tolerance for themselves and that, but also an intolerance that, hey, this isn't your fault and you don't need to take this? Do you see? It's been a really tough line for us.
Right. You know what I teach them is we become products of our environment. So the longer you leave yourself in a situation, it starts to become part of your grid. So if you want to protect your grid, you can stay, you know what I'm saying, and sustain yourself, which some of us do, which we did. I mean, yeah. I didn't leave my home, but what I had to do, and being a man, a spiritual guy, I feel like I had that extra help, but I was able to protect myself in an environment where my grid system. Matter of fact, what I did, I'll tell you what I did on a personal level, is as I was going through all that craziness that I told you about, I created a functional family in the process. So I was blessed to be a good athlete. I was a phenomenal athlete. And my mom didn't want to take me to counseling, so she put me into sports as a respite. So I played basketball, baseball, football, and soccer from the age of 8 until I graduated high school. And when I was a senior in high school, I could have gone to college for all 4, but I picked football. Now I tell you this because I took my coaches as my father figures. I took my teammates as my brothers and sisters, and the accolades that I would get for being good in the sport became what you get in a traditional family. So what I'm saying is, when you get those kids, now I was creative enough to do that. You want that young person that's living in that environment to understand that you can live in an environment, but you don't have to become it. And so they just have to be cognizant of it and give them the space to say, and I always say this, once it gets to the point where you feel unsafe, you got to make the call. And especially if you're bridging a relationship. If you're in an outreach program, you know what I'm saying, and you build a relationship, I always create a space, you know, like CPS, you have, you know, Child Protective Services. When I'm in a group, I tell them right in the beginning, hey, listen, I'm a mandated reporter. I'm telling you this before we get into the nooks and crannies of your life. If you tell me something that I feel that you're not in a safe place, I don't want you to feel like I'm going behind your back. I'm telling you at A that when I get this information, I'm gonna tell somebody.
Yeah, I love that. And we've had to take that stand.
We've had to do that.
It's just not easy, because you know you want to do the right thing, but our duty, we've always said, is to the child. Always. First and foremost, it is to the child. That's where we stand. So, but it's just such a hard line, because you want that accepting and tolerance and that, but then once it crosses the line, we have to hit almost that intolerance, like you said. But I love the idea that you said, well, I recreated my own family. And I think that's so important, that people have to know that's an option, because it sounds so simple, but it's not. And it's right in front of you, like you said. So that's very helpful, I think, with different things that we deal with, that you're not only stuck with the original hand you're dealt. You're just not. You can pull new cards. And
it's okay to not be tolerant of somebody that you love. You know, that in our family, you know, my father is a very sweet, lovable guy publicly. Although, you know, and one of those things, he's just struggled with addiction his entire life. He's been imprisoned. He's, you know, all of these things. And so he doesn't play a role in our life, and we miss him. And there are times when the children ask, like, are we ever going to see him again? And I say, I really don't know. He's not making good decisions. So when he starts making good decisions, I'm sure we'll probably see him again. Until then, we just may not. And that's really hard to say. You can love somebody, you can, support them with prayer or with love, but it doesn't have to become a part of your life.
Yeah. Well, you know what will happen is if you allow it to become part of your life, they take from you.
Big time.
You know, yeah. So it's a double whammy. So you get, it's funny with my siblings. So you figure I have two brothers, a sister, and me. And all four of us took away from my alcoholic father differently. So my oldest brother, he's a big guy. I'm a big guy, but my older brother's a big guy. He probably could have mashed my dad during the process of all his craziness, but he chose isolation, and he ended up marrying women that took advantage of him because rather than being aggressive towards my dad, he just made believe it wasn't happening. My second brother became like my dad, an alcoholic. So they became hangout partners. So when you talk to my second oldest brother about my dad, he gets offended when you say my dad wasn't a good dad, because in his eyes,
wow,
he was ideal. And then my sister, because every daughter wants daddy to be the knight in shining armor, created a facade of a man. And so she, to this day, when she speaks of my dad, he's like this honorable guy. But my mom and I laugh because I was the one that took the reality from it. My dad was so bad that my mom, if she stays at my house now, you sometimes have to go into the room because she still has nightmares of the terror that this man put her through. You know what I'm saying? But I lived that with her. So rather than spinning it like my family has done, I took it, of course, and I use it in the work that I do, but I look at it for exactly what it is. He was an alcoholic. Yeah. My brother's excuse is the fact that he was raised that way. So he raised us the best that he could. But then you know what I say to my brother? I said, because my brother ended up doing it to his kids. I said, yo, listen, I had a choice. My kids don't know that, man. So how are you going to tell me my dad gets the freedom to treat me a certain way? I don't treat my kids that way. And I was treated that way. So, it's perspective. And I think it's everything in life. You can take any situation you're in. And I wrote a book. It's called Be Encouraged. And each page is about finding the proper perspective in any situation that you're in. But you have to be cognizant and it has to be deliberate.
Yeah.
Cognizant and deliberate. I love it.
Well, I love the deliberate. And that's not a hard, I'm sure it's probably easier for you now, but to see things so clearly. But no doubt your feet feel more solid on the ground than otherwise they would be. Because breaking a cycle is hard work. I don't care what anyone says. It takes grit. Like you said, you had to be so intentional to say, no, I'm not doing that. And the breaking of the addictive, abusive cycle is one that I respect more than anything, because I've worked with so many people now around it. I'm going, wow, this is serious work. And it's probably the most important work. And it's either the most honorable or dishonorable path you'll take. It's really that serious when it comes to family unit in this path.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really what drives me. We've fostered through the pandemic, and it's really everything that we're talking about is really what drives me, my experiences, and just as you're talking about, to really want to pour into those children that may not have another perspective without us in their life. So, whew. Yeah. I've had to fight tears many times through. I don't know that I've ever gotten so emotional on a podcast. I just feel incredibly kindred.
No, I think you guys have a lot of kindred spirit together, and it's not easy, but this is the importance.
On both sides, which is like my dad was that way, and then I also was your mom. So it's kind of like this is in a couple different directions for me. Yeah. And I so appreciate all of the wisdom that you're speaking into and giving your perspective, not only as a child in this situation, but as somebody that is now mentoring to other children. So in addition to all this wisdom that you've shared with us, you know, some major takeaways. One being listen to the nuance, like read between the lines, parents, to really take a moment to hear what is being said and then maybe what's not being said, which only comes if you make yourself available. Another part, finding the rhythm, right? Find the rhythm, find the cadence in yourself and in those around you, right? So that you can really find where you fit in and what your family and your children and the significant others in your life need. Make the dirt under your feet, not on your head. Whew,
I'll never look at a donkey the same.
Amazing. So, you know, those are just some of my major takeaways, in addition to just the feeling that I have of like hope, but like thoughtfulness. Anyways, I'm really appreciative of your time, Michael. Tell us, 75-year-old Michael, we do 75-year-old.
This is our traditional question that we've gotten some incredible answers from incredible people. And now knowing how much you've experienced, we just like to ask that. You know, we all say, well, this is what you'd say to 20-year-old Mike, right? But what would the 75-year-old Michael say to Michael today? So we're talking years down the road, but hopefully wiser, been through more sage wisdom. What do you think your 75-year-old self would say? What advice would he give?
You know, I'm spiritual, and I heard your wife say prayer. So you threw a keyword. You know, you got to talk like that when you talk to other spiritual people. So I caught it. I caught the prayer, but I'm going to say that because my 75-year-old person would say, the enemy came to get me when I was young. And the enemy came to get me when I was young because he peeked into my future and he saw the influence that I was going to have on the world. And so he came to get me, call it what you may be, the universe, God, put a hedge over me, protected me. Fortunately, I'm connected to him, so it's reciprocated. And I now use what was used to take me out to bring life to those that I come in contact with. So, you know, that's what he would say. I didn't know, you know, and there's times where I sit back in my chair, and you know, just like we're saying, kindred spirit, there's things and stories that I could tell you where we can make a lifetime movie. But I sat back in my chair and I said that I had to go through all that I went through to do what I do today. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's all connected. It's all connected. So that 75-year-old would just tell him, yo, dude, you did it. You did it, you know, because he came for me. He came for me, you know, and I watched the enemy take a whole bunch of guys out my age, you know, living on my street, but he didn't get me.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that.
Whew.
Michael, how do more people find out about you? Where can people find you? More of what you do, more of what you talk about?
So check this out. MichaelArterberry.com is I do public speaking, you know, so I bring this thing to a stage. My work with the youth, they can come to youthvoicescenter.org. That's where you can see what I do with my nonprofit. You guys just friended me on Instagram. My social media is Instagram, Facebook. I'm very interactive. My Facebook pages give off the same energy that you may feel throughout this podcast. Also, you know, what I do is I do a lot of one-to-one, you know, so if a person feels like they've connected to me through the podcast, once it's over, we'll put my email address down, and I like to do some one-to-one coaching and help people connect their dots and be able to walk and prevail, you know what I'm saying? But those are some ways, and my book. I want them.
Say the name of it again.
Be encouraged, and if they, we can put it in the show notes. If they go to shakethedirtexperience.com, they can get a free signed copy of my book. But listen, they have to pay for postage. Now, we're going to laugh about that, but people go there and they get turned off because they get there and they see that they have to pay. It's free, but you have to pay for postage.
Sounds like it'd be worth it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good.
So,
We'll have that in the show notes, and definitely check out. We've loved talking to you. There's obviously a lot of crossover and some deep core values. You did a tremendous job today imparting wisdom and being vulnerable. And man, we couldn't ask for anything more. So I just want to say thank you very much for such a great interview.
yeah, it's the energy though. So I have to tell you that, you know, not all my podcasts go like this. So, you know, it's the energy that's created. You know what I'm saying? Soldiers in the same army, if we have to say. That's what it is. So, no, yeah, I thank you guys just as well.